When people ask me what my favourite film is, I struggle to come up with an answer. There are so many to choose from. How do I decide between the film I was obsessed with as a kid and the first film to make me cry?
Long live the king.
What separates my favourite fantasy flick from my favourite horror movie?
Come and play with us, Daddy.
How can I justify naming any one movie as my favourite when so many have had such a profound impact on me? Recently though, I surprised myself by giving someone an answer to this question for the first time, and it wasn't an answer I expected to give. I was talking to my older brother after seeing the most recent Star Wars, and he asked me if I had a favourite film. I gave my usual indecisive answer, but then he probed further, asking if there was a film that meant more to me than any other. And that prompted me to give an answer for the first time. I told him that my favourite film wasn't Return of the King, wasn't The Shining. In fact, it wasn't any of the films you just saw clips of. It was A Monster Calls. First off, if you haven't seen A Monster Calls, go and watch it. Seriously, watch it, and then come back to this video. In short, it tells the story of 13-year-old Connor O'Malley, who is struggling to come to terms with his mother's deteriorating health and potentially terminal cancer. As her condition worsens, Connor is visited by the Monster, a giant tree played by Liam Neeson, who tells him a series of fables in an attempt to help him accept his truth. It is one of the most intricately crafted, beautifully shot, and brilliantly acted films I've ever seen. I actually wrote a review of it last year on FilmFifty, my film review site, and I gave it my highest score yet. Now, I'm not saying that A Monster Calls is my all-time favourite film and always will be. For a start, I think the idea of having a favourite anything is naive. Your individual favourite music, food, film, TV show, I don't know, cereal, should be constantly changing as you experience new things.
These are a few of my favourite things.
So why, in that moment, did I decide that A Monster Calls meant enough to me to warrant labelling it my favourite film? I've given this a lot of thought, and come to the conclusion that A Monster Calls is my perfect film. Or at least it is at the moment. Let me explain. Oh, and consider this a spoiler warning. This is a spoiler warning. There will be spoilers for A Monster Calls. Cool. I often get criticised by my friends and family for being too critical of the films that I watch. I get told that I pay too much attention to small details and care too much about story and character consistencies. But I can't help that, it's just the way that I watch films. A Monster Calls manages to tick every single one of my boxes. Its characters are complex and well developed, its pacing is impeccable, and its storytelling tone is defined and consistent. Not many films bring me to tears, but A Monster Calls does at 4 separate points in its runtime, and has done on every single one of my viewings. The first of these scenes is Connor's grandmother's reaction to his destruction of her living room, and simply put, it is one of my favourite scenes in film. The use of silence to convey his grandmother's simultaneous anguish at the destruction of so many treasured items and reluctance to shout at Connor in such an emotional time is nothing short of filmmaking brilliance. Sigourney Weaver is so subtle and authentic in her portrayal that the audience is able to understand her character's situation perfectly without a word being spoken. The emotional impact of A Monster Calls is part of the reason I love it so much, and this emotion is built through perspective. To quote my review, the film's emotional power comes from the fact that we are told this story exclusively from Connor's perspective, and the audience feels every twist and turn with him. The only conversations we see between other characters are those that Connor overhears, and every impactful moment hits the audience at the same time as it hits Connor. Anyway, I've completely digressed from the central theme of this video. The title isn't what makes A Monster Calls great, it's what makes a favourite film.
She needs to sort out her priorities.
So let's come back to the question I asked earlier. What is it about A Monster Calls that made me think of it when I was asked if there was a film that meant more to me than any other? For a start, I have a very personal response to this film, having lost a close family member to cancer at around the same age that Connor does. Without going into too much detail, I empathise hugely with Connor's confusion with the situation and feeling that the adults in his life are keeping him in the dark in an attempt to protect him from the truth. But it's more than simply a personal affinity to Connor's story. In fact, I don't think I'd have any less love for this film if I didn't have a relatable personal experience. Every time I watch it, I get so caught up in Connor's emotional journey, so attached to the characters, so immersed in the monster's stories. I love the intricately crafted dialogue and the mesmeric cinematography. the way Connor's pencil scratches across the page when he draws, and the watercolour runs and flows during the monster's stories. The point is, there is something about this film that I respond to. I'm not saying this is the best film ever made, or that everybody will love it, or even that I think it's better than any of the other films that I love. I'm saying that my personal response to A Monster Calls was enough, in that moment talking to my older brother, for me to say that it is the film that means the most to me. And in the end, isn't that the most important element of a favourite film? Thanks for watching.